What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'm going to talk about some key levels to watch for as time goes on and what the news is saying about Tesla stock. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. So this morning, Tesla's seen some negative headlines about how their sales in many European regions are declining to some extent. And I think this is dragging the share price down at least a little bit. It could dip a little bit more, but we're going to be watching to see if Tesla can make a higher low compared to this low, as we're still technically riding this trend line up. And then we're going to be watching to see if Tesla could bounce at least after that. But there are some negative headlines coming out this morning, so be very, very wary of that. Now, as a reminder, Thursday, November 6th is going to be Tesla's annual shareholder meeting. This is going to be very important for Tesla and its investors. But before this comes out, just know that there is some negative news coming out today in the morning. There's headlines talking about how Tesla's sales have dropped in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and many Scandinavian countries. Um, Overall, looking at the car registrations so far, we're seeing an 89% decline in Sweden, an 86% decline in Denmark, and a 50% decline in Norway, at least thus far. I also saw headlines about how in Spain, we saw the sales down, but in other regions such as France, the sales are up 2.4%. So not too bad all over the place. Some areas are kind of like mixed, but of course, in Scandinavian countries where EVs are more common, when we see sales declining, it's a bigger deal to a lot of mainstream media, and they do tend to scream when Tesla sees the sales decline, and they whisper about the areas where the sales tend to be better. So despite this, Tesla is down just a little bit in the pre-market, and we're going to see how well we hold up. But there is more data coming out that could cause some more volatility. So at 10 o'clock a.m., that's when we have the main pieces of data. Today is Monday, November 3rd, 2025. Firstly, 15 minutes after the stock market opens at 9:45 a.m., we have the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI. This could cause a little bit of volatility. And then the main time for volatility is going to be at 10 o'clock a.m. as we have the ISM manufacturing numbers coming out. So we're going to see if the manufacturing numbers are decent or not. Do they cause the market to dump or pump? And I think this is going to be having a big effect on Tesla. So just keep that in mind as time goes on. And then besides this, Berkshire Hathaway had their overall earnings, and we're seeing their cash hoard continuing to grow. The share price is up a little bit because once again they saw a good operating profit. But like I said before, there's just a lot of cash at hand, and they're not really repurchasing any shares, at least thus far. So that's some news that's coming out. Besides that, I'm not seeing anything else that's too crazy. Earnings, with big tech earnings that came out, we had a mixed reaction, which is why the market also had a mixed reaction. Some of them went up, some went down. So we're going to see what happens. Finally, when it comes to President Trump, he's talking about his tariffs as they're going to be involved in a lot of court cases in the upcoming days and weeks. And on Wednesday, President Trump and his team are going to be heading to the Supreme Court to face off in the legal battle that's been taking place. Don't forget, small businesses in a group of states have once again contended with President Trump's tariffs, and that has once again caused a lot of legal battles that are taking place right now. So we're going to see what happens to the Supreme Court as they're going to be looking at arguments and looking at the merit of the case. And there's going to be a vote eventually coming to see if they are legal or not. But that's a very important news that's coming out. We're going to see what we hear from the Supreme Court on Wednesday involving President Trump's tariffs. So that being said, the news for Tesla is a little bit more negative this morning, but Tesla's still holding up decently. It's not doing too bad. But we're also on an uptrend. So even if Tesla comes down just a bit, it's not looking too bad. If we hold above 460, Tesla could be looking for 465 next. But if 455 breaks, we have 452 and 446.8 as our main supports. There's a chance we decline a bit before we try to bounce again off this trend line. We're overall on an uptrend making higher lows. So we're going to see if this dips a bit before it tries to bounce all over again. So make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. But overall, I still think that as long as we make a higher low, Tesla could still see a nice bounce as time goes on. Now, if we end up losing support around 445, of course, if we lose this trend line, we could be dipping more, and the head and shoulders like pattern is still a possibility, but it's not guaranteed, and we're still technically on an uptrend, and we're bouncing off this white trend line every time we touch it. So the odds do favor a small decline followed by a bounce. As of right now, that's more likely. So watch and see if the white trend line holds or not. But so far, Tesla is on an uptrend. And once again, the data at 10 o'clock a.m. is going to likely affect this. So watch for that as well. There might be a decline coming for 452 to 446. Then we'll see if we bounce. But if we hold above 460, it's going to be more bullish. For now, in the pre-market, we're favoring a small dip with all this European sales data that's looking negative, and then we should be bouncing after that. As long as we don't end up losing 445, we're going to be fine. Now, for SPY, okay, we're holding up in the pre-market. We're doing a decent job, but just keep in mind there's another gap that's forming, and there is some tough resistance around 686. If we break 686, there is a possibility for 688, but if we come short again, just like how we made a lower high on Friday, if we reject and we don't hold 686, we could be returning to fill this gap at 681. So I'll be watching that very closely on SPY, especially with the data coming out. And watch and see if 682 holds. If it doesn't, there's more downside risk. So that's your range, 682 to 686. We may pop, and then we're going to see if we dip back down to fill the gap. On the QQQ, we're trying to push right here. If we break 636, we're bullish, but if we lose 629, we're going to be more bearish. Now, it's possible we try to pop a bit before turning back down. But, in case we don't hold above 635, but there is a gap to fill back down here at 629, and we'll see what happens, especially as time goes on. Now, could we push more? Yes, we could be looking for the mid 6.3s, and we're going to see if we reject or not. But then keep in mind there is that gap below, so watch that very closely. On the IWM, we're making lower highs here. We're going to see if we hold above 247. If not, we could be dipping back down to 244. On ES, we're making lower highs here. We're going to see if we hold above 69.10. If not, we're going to be looking for a big decline. We also have support at 68.64, so we're going to see how it goes as we make lower highs. But overall, we're holding up decently. Expect some consolidation here, 6,900. We're going to see if we reject or not off that area. We're still technically in a range on ES. NQ is pushing a bit, but don't forget that there's still this gap down here. We're going to be looking at support at 26,091 and resistance at 26,200. It might push a little bit higher, but then we're going to be watching resistance in the low 26,200 to see if it rejects or not. On Bitcoin, we have a double bottom here. We also have resistance at 109,000, so we're going to see if it rejects. So watch that very closely. Once again, Tesla could be retesting 452 to 446, and we're going to see if it bounces after that. On Nvda, we're pushing right now. I think we had some news that came out about a new deal that was set. So we have resistance to watch for at 210 and support at 201. Be careful right here at resistance at 210. We're going to see if it holds above that or not. If it doesn't, it could still turn, especially since we have some gaps to fill. So be careful at 210. Aapl is showing some weakness, so we have to hold 269. If not, we could be dipping to 265. Palantir is on an uptrend. We're looking for essentially 210 as our target. If we lose 202, we're looking for a big move down. AMD, this has earnings coming up, but there is a gap down here, so I think it might return to 256. But earnings is going to affect whether this head and shoulders plays out or not. It still could go either way. Coinbase is in a range between 345 and 339. We're going to likely trade sideways and maybe dip if that fails us. Amazon's looking a bit more bullish. We dipped and then we started to bounce because we had some good news. There is resistance at 258. If that breaks, we could climb even higher. But if we lose 245, we're going to be declining. So for now, we're bouncing. Meta is also trying to bounce. We're trying to base at 650. As long as that holds, we could return for essentially 663. Google could be looking for essentially 258. And then Microsoft is showing some weakness with some negative news. We need to hold above 515. If not, we could be declining to 510 or below. The VIX is starting to decline a bit, but don't forget that this could be forming an accumulation. And as this consolidates, we're going to see if this bounces later on, which could once again be, in correlation with the market slowing down. We're going to see if that ends up being the case or not. But as of right now, we're holding up. And for Tesla, don't be surprised if we see a little bit of a decline before it tries to bounce again. We're still technically on an uptrend, so Tesla's doing fine. So just remember that we're doing fine so far. So look for some volatility at 9:45 and 10 a.m. and we'll see what happens. Thank you all so much for listening, and peace out.